Good afternoon. Okay, we continue in the series on the topic of contemporary issues in HRM. In the last lecture, we touched upon Kaizen, and we will see a little more about Kaizen in this lecture. Kaizen, as we said, means continuous process improvement involving everybody in the working environment. Looked at more broadly, however, Kaizen philosophy advocates ongoing improvement not only in working life, but also in personal life, home life and social life. The type of improvement that Kaizen signifies is the constant and gradual or incremental kind of improvement, no matter how small, which should be taking place all the time in every process, involving everyone from the ranks of management and the workforce. So, please note the key word here is small, incremental, but inexorable, in the sense there should be no stop. It must go on and on and on, the improvement. Clear? That embodies, in essence, the philosophy of Kaizen. When a new standard, therefore, is achieved, the management should make certain that it is maintained, and the conditions there are to ensure the attainment of even higher standards. The Kaizen improvement is a well defined and long term and long lasting improvement, and is the result of a team effort. So, this is the third concept you must internalize and remember. It is a team effort. It is a process oriented and actually requires little investment. You do not require highly automated machinery and so on, but it requires a great human effort to maintain and sustain it. Okay? Right. Now, let us see Kaizen and innovation. See, the Kaizen improvement contrasts sharply with the type of drastic improvement. Kaizen, we had said, was incremental, slow, gradual improvement. But innovation, all right, is usually a result. What follows innovation is something great and drastic. Innovation is a short term, dramatic improvement of the result of a technological breakthrough based on individual ideas and efforts. An example of innovation is CNC control machinery in the workshop. CNC control machinery has dramatically changed the way, for instance, sheet metal was manufactured and fabricated on the shop floors. It can cut down to half a shift what used to take 3 shifts to manufacture. So, this is something dramatic, but it required a huge investment, and if you did not have the orders over a short period of time, all right, then your costs would increase. You will not be able to amortize your costs, and then the product will reflect higher costs. So, then it becomes very important to have high volumes. But remember, on the other hand, in the case of Kaizen, it's slow, gradual, incremental, is really due to human effort, and in that sense you do not require to have large investments, but the slow and steady is the improvement, not dramatic and fast. So, you have to decide now. What we have learned from the last 30 years or so is the slow and steady is winning the race so far, but not on its own, as we will see as we move along. Innovation also is necessary. It is normally requires a large initial investment, but little effort to maintain, since it is usually a one-off phenomenon. The top management responsibility then is to maintain a balance between the two, both Kaizen as well as innovation, because both are necessary. You have to strike a balance for the survival and competitive success of an organization. So, shall we say both are necessary, but one is necessary but not sufficient. You have to have both, and each individual organization has to decide what will be the kind of ratios in which you concentrate on the Kaizen approach as well as the innovation. In summary then, the main difference lies in the fact that the Kaizen process is oriented, the Kaizen is process oriented, and innovation is result oriented. Very high outcomes, dramatically high outputs. If you look at the scenario in manufacturing industries across the world after the World War II, in the post-war US economy, the philosophy of innovation became the order of the day. Many technical innovations and new products appeared and led to immediate profits and instant recognition. Therefore, as a consequence, the seemingly minor benefits of gradual improvement as advocated by Kaizen were not rated as very important. Emphasis was therefore on short-term profits, and the climate for slow and patient efforts towards long-term improvement became unfavorable. The Japanese, on the other hand, adopted the policy of Kaizen, which promoted and supported team efforts towards gradual improvement. Improvement of the processes gradually, which form the very basis of Kaizen. The Kaizen process oriented approaches were efforts for process involvement and improvement, which was properly recognized to be a vital component of improvement. So, as we have said a little earlier, process orientation then became the key, that if you focus on the process, benchmark the process, continually improve the process, albeit in very small quantities or very small measure, that is the key to ultimate improvement. Kaizen is therefore as important, if not more important, in the long haul as the innovation philosophy. Any questions? As you see, one is not sufficient, both are necessary. One is not sufficient. You have to have both and balance both. Kaizen, therefore, is a people-oriented approach too, which promotes discipline, participation and involvement, skills development, morale improvement, and the communication improvement, both vertically as well as horizontally across the organization. High people orientation. Kaizen does not exclude efforts for innovation, as we said, and new ideas, and once that is achieved, Kaizen efforts maintains it and improves it. Now, what is trying to signify? He says innovation can merge in with the Kaizen effort very logically. You're having good Kaizen effort, gradual incremental improvements and then you have an innovation which dramatically raises the outcome, but you still need Kaizen, because having raised that outcome, to maintain that dramatically higher level of outcome or performance, to sustain it and to again keep on improving it till the next innovation comes, what is it that you require? You require the same lowly, if I may say so, Kaizen, to push it along, push it along. So, both have a place in the sun. Okay? Any questions? Right. The Kaizen management practices. A management oriented Kaizen is crucial if morale and momentum are to be kept up. The Kaizen practices outlined by many companies focus on the operational elements of the product and service quality, which clearly are management driven. We had said earlier in the last lecture that for quality control, which is total, that is total quality management, you require champions. It has to be led by senior and top management. So, here too, and therefore, necessarily becomes a cross-functional effort. Why cross-functional? Because if management are to drive it, management is in charge of all the functions, they will deploy all functions into the effort, and hence it becomes cross-functional. Some of the important operational practices which the Kaizen philosophy incorporates are as follows. Total quality control. The father of the TQC, total quality control, is Dr. Armand Feigenbaum, and the Japanese were the first to discover it. You see the irony of this. He was not a Japanese. Americans didn't recognize it. Who discovered, so to say, by recognizing it for the hidden potential it had for improving the quality and productivity? It was the Japanese. That is why we say the Japanese discovered it. It was there. Feigenbaum defines the total approach to quality involving everybody in the process, manufacturing or otherwise, all branches, whether it is marketing, finance, HR, everyone. To Feigenbaum, a simple way of managing a business organization needs a customer oriented, cost effective, quality management program that all the people in the company can relate to and furthermore commit themselves to. You see, he is in that sense really the father. All these concepts of customer orientation, quality management effectively, people involvement, people commitment, which later came out in all the other tools and techniques, he enunciated those. The philosophy of Feigenbaum's approach reminds us all of the ideals of another quality guru, that is Deming, but its philosophy also relates to another guru, Juran, particularly in the advocacy of the 4 steps of an effective quality control system, which are setting up quality standards, appraising conformance to the standards, acting when the standards are exceeded. Acting means intervening. All right. When you exceed, you don't sit quiet and rest on the laurels. And last, planning for improvement in the standards. That is what the action which you take. Feigenbaum's philosophy traces the need for quality mindedness throughout the organization. This needs a serious program of quality education and participation aimed at stimulating and building up operator responsibility and interest in quality. You see the people orientation. You are now focusing and addressing each operator that you have a responsibility, you have to have a commitment to quality, you have to take interest in the quality. So, it comes right down to individual operator, essentially a people oriented effort. This program should have the complete support of the top management and its culture should be allowed to develop gradually within the company. It has to be nurtured, because culture is a thing which does not develop dramatically and fast. A culture can be destroyed also, but again it is not possible to destroy a culture very fast. It is a slow but sure process. Feigenbaum's definition of a total quality control system encapsulates his philosophy, which can be summarized as follows. Total quality system TQS is the agreed, that is bilateral agreed, company-wide and plant-wide work structure, documented in effective, integrated, technical and managerial procedures for guiding the coordinated actions of the people, the machines and the information of the company and plant in the best and most practical ways to assure customer quality satisfaction and economic costs of quality. So, it is a very broad based and comprehensive definition. After Feigenbaum, there have been an illustrious line of other Japanese exponents of quality and quality control. Professor Ishikawa, the pioneer in Japan of certain quality tools such as the cause and effect diagrams, also called the fishbone diagram, and the movements such as quality circles, which we talked about a little in the last lecture, is also associated strongly with the company-wide quality control. And Professor Ishikawa strongly believed in the provision of a proper quality control education. You see, he went a step further. Instead of involving only workmen, trying to get the commitment of individual operators, he said that the involvement must take the form of active education. Educate them, train them. They are not engineers, they do not have the knowledge, but you impart the knowledge to them as an organization. Initially to factory foremen and supervisors, and subsequently to grassroots level workers. In its time, and even today, I dare say, it is a revolutionary concept. There are not many organizations in our country and elsewhere who will take the responsibility of educating their workmen at the grassroots level, possibly because they have not internalized and they do not believe that that will have a business outcome which is good. That means, in the long run, such education to people in the lowest level down the line will yield economic benefits to the business. I do not think they have internalized that and they do not believe in it. But this is what Professor Ishikawa started. And how to impart this education, because there were not enough material for that level, pitched for the level whereby you could educate workmen. So, to facilitate the education, he produced himself down to earth textbooks for quality circle members. So, he himself wrote these books. Concentrating on simple statistical techniques for data collection and presentation, which would help in sorting out the administration of possible causes of variation and their interrelationships. What does that all mean? Means the norms are set, you are having variations, you want to analyze why the variations are coming, because wide variations means bad quality. So, simple statistical method, which otherwise known only to the engineers in the office, he wrote the simple methods and educated workmen, such as tools and such as tools which he called cause and effect diagram, or Ishikawa diagram is called after him, of fishbone diagram. And an important requirement for an effective application of this technique is open group communication, if you want to educate, and participation, which Ishikawa viewed as critical. We have talked earlier of the closed shop, closed system in relation to communication channels. Well, here it is the opposite. Professor Ishikawa believed that in order to be effective in applying the education programs to workmen, you have to adopt very open group communication and participation. Ishikawa is also associated with company-wide quality control movement, which started in Japan in the years following the visits of Deming and Juran, and which was concerned with company-wide participation in the pursuit of quality and its control from top management to the lower ranking employees. This was another revolutionary thought, because prior to this movement, quality was supposed to be the responsibility of the quality control department, and at best the quality control manager was the boss, the head honcho for quality. The top management of the company, the organization, did not consider it necessary. It was treated as a specialist department. Now the whole thing has become topsy-turvy, in the sense quality is a business of everyone, top to bottom and side to side. Entire organization has to be involved in the quality. Okay, any questions? Right. Then here is another Kanban, or just-in-time systems. Kanban in Japanese means signboards or labels. That is something that is being left behind at a specific stage of the process. Say it's an assembly line or a manufacturing come assembly line. So you have different processes, and the process, from one process to the other, the work is flowing. So something which is left behind at a specific stage of the process to signify that a collection of a quantity of parts is taking place. Why collection of quantity? Because operation for that part of the process is over. So you collect the parts, take it to the next process. When all the parts have been collected, the same Kanban, which means the label or a signboard or a job card, is sent further back to an earlier stage of the same process. Why back? Or to a preceding process, at which time that signboard becomes an order for more parts. So you see the simplicity of the system. You don't stock parts at each work stage. You finish at 1 week and send the order card or the signboard back, signifying is over. So we require more to do the next process. So just in time, when you have finished the process at this work stage, the previous work stage, which is feeding to your work stage, they supply you the parts. And that's why you don't carry any inventory at your work stage. And imagine a situation in a large factory where you have several processes running and work in progress or work in process. At each stage of the process, you have inventories of work in progress. If you cut all that down, you have huge savings in lowering of your inventory costs in the workshop. So Kanban can be viewed as an instruction requiring the operator to perform a given task, that is to produce more product or move the material. Now, when it was first proposed in our country, it was found to be very, very funny, because people, manufacturing managers and the people down the line in manufacturing, never believed that this could be done, because how could you not have at each work stage, right, a buffer stock, because your work stage may have more efficient processing, in which case you finish off, And then what do? There is a work stoppage. So, you have to have a buffer stock, so that at all times you are ensured that you do not stop your work because you do not have input material. And people thought that is just not possible to have a assembly line or a processing line where there is no buffer stocks at each stage, because then there will be chaos, there will be work stoppage. But now many Indian companies have been able to achieve it. And what is the secret? What is the key to the JIT? The key is that each workstation, what they are processing, has such high quality that no rejects are there. The time in which they process it is exactly as per the benchmark. So, as is written down on the process sheet, the processing actually happens every time and all times as per that, time and quality. No stoppage, you can immediately supply it to the succeeding line and so on. So, therefore, you see the secret of Kanban is you can't have Kanban unless you have improved your quality to some threshold limit, and not only in one department, but across the whole factory. And when I say that, it also means departments which are not on the workshop floor, purchase department, procurement department, stores department, issuing department. So, the whole total quality management, you have raised the quality of the entire organization to a level where you can introduce just in time workflow. And of course, the savings in the manufacturing setup is massive, because imagine what are the inventory costs of a large organization. Okay? The underlying principle is that all the necessary parts are received and delivered promptly only when they are needed. They are not sitting there before that, thereby cutting down a waste storage space and inventory costs and saving the costs of work in process. Any questions? Okay. The importance of Kanban communicating procedure has made it synonymous with JIT, just in time production systems, first employed by the Toyota Motor Company in Japan. And inherent in the JIT principle is the understanding that people responsible for a particular process are the suppliers of those responsible for the next process, as we said, and the customers for those of the preceding process. Internal customer concept is inbuilt into this. Jidoka. Here is another system. Taichi Ono, the pioneer of Kanban system in Toyota's plant, combined the Kanban system and extended it with another structural feature, which in Japanese was called Jidoka or automation. What does that mean? This means that a automatic mechanism stops the entire production system whenever a defective part is found along the process line. Imagine, it's a automation technique where they are scanning all the parts which are flowing down the line, and any defective part which is scanned, the line is stopped, because you do not want that part to finally go into an assembly and then found out at the last stage where it is rejected, and there will be large number of these assemblies with this defective part. So, nipping the evil in the bud, as they say, all right. When the automatic system stops the entire production system, whenever a defective part is found, appropriate adjustments then take place so that the major problems are prevented from arising in future. Now, this of course is applicable, as you have realized, only where you already have a very high level of quality manufacture, high level. Otherwise, what is going to happen? If you automate this, then every few minutes you will have defective parts coming and the whole assembly line stopping. So, I would say this is a refinement which is a luxury of those who have already achieved a high level of quality. Poka Yoke, the Japanese quality specialist Shiego Shingo, developed the concept of Poka Yoke, which means defect is equal to 0. Sounds very ambitious. That means there should be 0 defect, meaning mistake proofing. Mistake proofing. There is another term you may have heard called fail safing, that is fail safe. This is in relation to safety, that if there is any failure, at least there is a measure built in which makes that failure non-accident. That means no one is hurt or injured. Money is wasted, time is wasted, but no one is hurt or injured. Fail safe. So, this is mistake proofing. Source inspection is aimed actively to identify process errors before they become defects. So, now you imagine a situation where you are processing sheet metal, let us say, and making cutouts. They are on a power press. Imagine if the press tools which are mounted, if they are not maintained properly and the tools become blunt, then what will happen? The cutouts you are making will fall or will not fit within the tolerance specified on the drawing. So, this concept of Poka Yoke is to identify process errors before they become defects. So, error in the process is bluntness of the tool which you are using. It has not been ground. Identify it. Take action. What are you doing in effect? The error which would have either the defect which would have come and reflected in the faulty part is eliminated. When an identification takes place, the process is stopped until the cause is determined and eliminated. Monitoring potential error sources takes place at every stage of the process, so that errors which lead to defect are detected as soon as possible and corrected at the source rather than at a later stage. And of course, then what happens is, even if there is some process defect, it does not ultimately cost the company dear, because you do not have huge wastage due to rejections and so on. Small group activities, SGA or quality control circles, which we touched upon, and this is just to reiterate that these are activities of informal groups whose members meet occasionally on a voluntary basis with the main purpose of problem solving. And these comprise of people from the management and the workforce, as well as suppliers and subcontractors. So, in a sense, it is cross functional. Why? Because when you have a problem, after all, these are problem solving groups, okay? And these are informal groups, as we say. That means these people who come together have a high commitment to the work, high commitment to the organization. Sometimes they do it in their own time, after the shift is over, not in company's time, because of their enthusiasm and their commitment. And they comprise people who are managers, also suppliers, contractors, because the problem, the contribution may come from any source, can come from the supplier, can come from a defective design which has been done at the management level and so on. So, all this is cross functional. And then these people work on an equal basis. When they come onto the quality circle team, no one pulls rank, although they may be managers and they may be ordinary workers and they may be suppliers, but they work on equal basis, which strengthens, all right, the team spirit, helps in setting up attainment of reasonable targets, improves morale and communication. promotes initiative and specifically develops the ability to solve problems. Over the years, there have been many such types of groups such as safety group, productivity committee, zero defects movements, quality control circles, mini think tanks et al. So many of them. But essentially, the concept is small group activities for problem solving and done jointly. Barriers of rank, barriers of organizational borders like suppliers, customers, they are lifted and they all work as a team and they produce synergy. Of these, the most widely used name is quality control circle, QC circle. Pioneered in Japan by Professor Ishikawa, as we saw a little earlier on. Initially, these quality circles represented study groups typically consisting of 6 to 10 people aiming towards the educational development of their members. Generally, the education was to study the quality techniques like statistical techniques on quality control, study of simple problem solving techniques like Pareto analysis, brainstorming session, cause and effect diagram, frequency histograms, control charts, etc. Study of reports of improvement projects carried out by other quality control circle groups was incorporated as a second part of the education. Participation in actual projects was the third, where the implementation of the lessons learnt in the education was achieved. So, it was a step by step process. First educate, then you observe what other circles have done, then you yourself come into the circle and you do it yourself, and then you use the knowledge which you have gained in the education process. Quality circles, control circles are not restricted to manufacturing industries, but also to the service sector, administration, sales, office work, etc., etc. It is all encompassing. Kaizen and Deming, the guru. Deming is the guru of the Japanese quality movement and they really revere him. There are many principles in Kaizen that are identical to certain of Deming's management rules. For example, the obsession with never ending quality improvement, the responsibility of the management, not only the quality control department or the workers, the relationship with the suppliers, the process oriented approach as distinct from the product oriented, total quality attainment, all departments, all spheres, striving for long term and sustained benefits rather than short term profits. The PDCA cycle as a philosophy of work, plan, do, check and again take action. The importance of communication and education, development and involvement of all employees in quality related activities. So much so that it is difficult really to distinguish most of the Kaizen principles from the Deming ideals. But this is not surprising because Kaizen represents the basis of Juran business philosophy and the Japanese business philosophy was inspired by Deming's teaching. That is why he is revered as a guru. Any questions on that? We have seen Kaizen, benchmarking, TQM, the interrelationship between these tools and techniques for overall improvement of quality, thereby cutting costs and thereby tackling the contemporary issues which basically relate to ruthless competition and struggle in the marketplace. Now, there is another technique called mentoring. It is not a new technique, it is as old as the hills, but somehow it was there in hibernation, practiced here and there in a few companies. But now again, as the monster of competition has risen up everywhere, cloud hangs low, we have various companies delving into the past and bringing out tools and techniques, polishing them up and trying to use them all for the same cause, cutting costs, becoming more competitive, surviving and prospering. So, what is mentoring? Mentoring is a relationship where one wiser and more experienced person in the organization assists another person to grow and learn. Experience, skills and a genuine desire to help are more valuable assets in a mentoring relationship than age or position. So, if you have a mentor, it is more important that he has this attitude, all right, experience to help and a genuine desire, which are more important than what position he has been in before he became a mentor or he is in as he became mentor. Open and assertive communication and trust of both parties are essential. So, one of the disadvantages of mentoring may be that it results in perpetuating of old ways at the expense of diversity and development. What does it mean? What it means is mentor after all is an older and hopefully wiser person who looks after as a friend, philosopher and a guide younger recruits into the company to guide them, to mold them into the culture of the company, to warn them to avoid pitfalls, to solve some of their problems as it comes, because he is experienced, all right. Usually he has held senior positions also, okay. But the flip side is that if you have all the new people who come in, they are molded by wiser and older people of the organization into the same culture, then you have a kind of situation where the fresh winds of change may be shut out, close the windows, and then it becomes, all right, a self-perpetuating kind of culture which may lose touch with the changes in the environment. Fresh air coming in from outside means what? That means you are in tune with the environment which is outside. And if you fall out of step and you are not in tune with the environment, that becomes a genuine danger. So, that has to be avoided in the mentoring process. So, in a mentoring process, organization may choose to do three ways of mentoring. Leave the mentoring as an informal process. Don't have a policy which is written down, leave it, let it be known that those managers, senior people with a wealth of experience who are so minded and would like to help, well, they may go ahead and kind of adopt some proteges and give the wise counsel to them, so that they learn and grow, but it is informal, in which case it works randomly and its impact on the individual and the organization will be a matter left to chance and will be largely unrecognized by the organization. You may have had few managers who were excellent mentors, but the organization does not really know, they retire and they go away, it is random. So, many organizations, they follow another policy called help mentoring. So, it is not fully informal or random, but formal or semi-formal, providing the environment where mentoring is regarded favorably. Self-development is encouraged and it is acceptable to take time for mentoring activity. So, which is important. That means it has the sanction and the encouragement of the management. So, in that sense it is management supported and not totally random. So, if you are a mentor and acting as a mentor to 5 or 6 other junior people, you can ask them to come away in company's time and talk to them, counsel them. It is not as if that itself is not allowed. It will not be seen that they are wasting their time coming out of their departments for the mentoring session. So, it has the management sanction. Third way that management organizations can do this mentoring process is focus and develop mentoring, by which it means it is a formal system. Design a mentoring tailored to the achievement of the organization's specific objectives. That means probably the HR department of the organization is given the role that we would like to have mentoring programs in our organization. So, please make a mentoring scheme, identify older experienced people, and when youngsters come into the organization, you allot the youngsters to these wiser and older people. Take stock of the mentoring, measure it, see that is helping and so on. So, formal system. And this formal system, that is this approach, will harness the benefits of effective informal mentoring within a formal and managed framework. Okay. Is that clear? So, here are some of the reasons why organizations have mentoring programs. Induction is one reason, that is when new people come in, to help new recruits, trainees or graduates to settle into the organization, to settle in, to mold themselves, tune themselves with the organizational informal culture, to know the ropes of the organization. Then skills enhancement, to enable skills to be passed on in the workplace by experienced, highly competent staff to others who need to acquire specific skills. Then career development, to help staff in the planning, development and management of their careers and to help them become more resilient in times of change. Resilient means what? Resilient is you don't crack up, you don't break. Change comes, turbulence comes, trauma comes, but you can weather the storm. That is resilience in times of change, and more self-reliant in their careers and self-directed learners, that is self-motivated. Then affirmative action. Mentoring can be used to assist women and minority groups to redress the imbalance at the higher levels in the organization. Sometimes they are discriminated against. Provide support and help to overcome barriers that often block their progress. You have heard of the glass ceiling? Glass ceiling, that means discrimination to minority groups like women, particularly this refers to women, up to a level, say manager level, and no more. There is no written policy, but there is an informal barrier that women cannot rise to the top levels of the organization. So, affirmative action, all right, is one of the ways, mentoring is one of the ways, all right, you can organize this affirmative action and prevent this malaise. Leadership and management development, that is to encourage the development of competencies more easily gained through example, guided practice or experience than by education and training. What does it mean? It means that business is very much an applied science and art. If you have a mentor, that is friend, philosopher, guide, Your boss also in a sense can be that, but usually it is dissociated. A mentor is dissociated from the person who has your direct performance review, appraisal and rating. See. So, if you have such a man, then you adopt him as an ideal. He has made his mark in the organization. He obviously has certain style, he has played certain roles, he has certain skills, he enjoys competencies, which he will tell you, he will guide you. And that way, on the job learning becomes a powerful motivator for you for self development, self learning, and the organization gains, because in a sense this is very powerful than just education and training programs they send you to for management development. Clear? Education support to bridge the gap between theory and practice. Formal education or training is complemented by the knowledge and the hands-on experience of competent practitioners who are the mentors. And then organizational development and culture change to share the values, the vision and the mission of the organization, to communicate and work on a one-to-one basis to develop required changes. Because the myths, rituals of the organization, the history, the older people, the mentors, they know about this and they tell their proteges about it and bring them in culturally into the organization. Customer service to model desired behaviors, encourage the development of competencies, motivate for service quality and above all to cultivate the right attitudes. Staff retention is one of the last benefits, that is to prevent attrition of trained personnel, who if they are not fitted into the organization may get demoralized, leave the organization. When they have a mentor, they feel they have an anchor, a sheet anchor. Times of trouble, they can go to them, they will guide them, counsel them. At other times, they will tell them how to develop, how to grow and so on. So, mentoring benefits to the organization: increase in morale and motivation, better productivity, discovery of talent, development of leadership for future survival and prosperity, that is the top management team development, communication of values, goals and plans, demonstration of personal and professional standards by the mentor, achievement of excellent service, fostering of shared value and team working, shared value of the people of the organization, which forms the basis of the culture of the organization, enhancement of leadership and people management skills of managers, re-energizing plateaued managers, that means managers who have kind of reached the end, what we call sometimes promoted to the level of incompetence, that means they cannot progress further. Sometimes mentoring helps to re-energize them and progress further. Increase in staff satisfaction and building a learning organization. We talked about it a bit in the last lecture, that team working is one of the drivers for a learning organization. Mentoring also contributes towards that. So, we end this lecture, all right. Thank you very much.